World Happiness Report 2021. Top 10 Happiest Countries in the World. Bhutan proposed a World Happiness Day to the United Nations in 2011, which brought international attention to happiness as a measurement of well-being. In 2012, the United Nations General Assembly declared March 20th as World Happiness Day, recognizing the relevance of happiness and well-being as universal goals and aspirations in the lives of human beings around the world, and the importance of their recognition in public policy objectives. The annual World Happiness Report has just been released, timed to the UN's annual International Day of Happiness on March 20th. This report is the 8th to come out since 2012. Happiness is a difficult thing to measure, but one initiative at the United Nations has been trying to figure it out. Every year, the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network publishes its World Happiness Report, a study that examines the connections between happiness and development, all while encouraging policymakers to place more of an emphasis on the former. Around 1,000 people in each UN member state rate their quality of life on a scale from 0 to 10, while researchers cull data from 6 areas: GDP per capita, life expectancy, social support, trust and corruption, perceived freedom to make life decisions, and generosity. This year the report paid special attention to evaluate how different governments have dealt with the pandemic, and how the trust in the government is directly related to overall happiness. The report provided 2 rankings, one based on the average of the survey taken by Gallup over 3 years starting 2018 and the other focused only on the year 2020 to understand the impact of the pandemic on subjective well-being and how factors that contribute to well-being affected the impact of the pandemic. To say that the past year has been a difficult one for people across the globe is something of an understatement. Not only has the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in the deaths of over 2.6 million people worldwide, but it has also led to a massive shakeup in everyday life for many of us. But despite the devastating events of the last 12 months and the resulting decline in mental health of people around the globe, there has been no change at the top spot when it comes to ranking the happiest country in the world. The pandemic reminds us of our global environmental threats, the urgent need to cooperate, and the difficulties of achieving cooperation in each country globally. It's worth noting that the World Happiness Report 2021 has been collated slightly differently this time round due to coronavirus. Not only were researchers unable to complete face-to-face interviews in a number of countries, but they also had to switch things up entirely by focusing on the relationship between well-being and COVID-19. Surprisingly, there was not, on average, a decline in well-being when measured by people's own evaluation of their lives, said the University of British Columbia's Professor John Helliwell, who also contributed to the report. One possible explanation is that people see COVID-19 as a common, outside threat affecting everybody, and that this has generated a greater sense of solidarity and fellow feeling. According to the report, people thrive in high-trust societies. When a pandemic like the coronavirus attacks the health and income of a country's residents, the residents of a high-trust society quite naturally look for and find cooperative ways to work together to repair the damage and rebuild better lives. This has led sometimes to surprising increases in happiness in the wake of what might otherwise seem to be unmitigated disasters. The most frequent explanation seems to be that people are pleasantly surprised by the willingness of their neighbors and their institutions to work in harness to help each other. This delivers a heightened sense of belonging and pride in what they have been able to achieve by way of mitigation. These gains are sometimes great enough to compensate for the material losses. Researchers say that the Nordic countries have always ranked highly when it comes to mutual trust. Trust is recognized as one of the major factors that helped to protect people during the pandemic, as well as confidence in governments. Intriguingly, cultural differences such as whether the head of government was a woman are also noted as significant considerations when measuring the success of COVID-19 strategies, along with income inequality and knowledge gained from previous epidemics. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the World Happiness Report 2021 also found that lockdowns and social distancing impacted workforce well-being tremendously. The report also proves that happiness is not driven by pay, and that the social connections and a sense of identity are more important. These findings point towards a hybrid future of work, with a balance between office life and working from home to maintain social connections while ensuring flexibility for workers. Of the 149 countries featured on the report, Afghanistan was ranked the most unhappy once again, followed by Zimbabwe, Rwanda, and Botswana. Those at the bottom of the list were mainly underdeveloped countries where issues such as political and armed conflicts were prevalent in recent times. The World Happiness Report 2021 reminds us that we must aim for well-being rather than mere wealth, which will be fleeting indeed if we don't do a much better job of addressing the challenges of sustainable development. Even though the top 10 list has remained virtually the same year over year, we still recommend checking out the full list ahead. Here's the list of top 10 world's happiest countries of 2021. 10. Austria. Austria, officially the Republic of Austria, is a landlocked East Alpine country in the southern part of Central Europe. It is composed of 9 federated states, one of which is Vienna, Austria's capital and largest city. Austria made the cut this year with high scores in life expectancy and GDP per capita. One main takeaway from the Institute's continuing research is that if you want to be happy, the first step is to stop stressing about how happy you are and go for a bike ride. Biking is one of the favorite ways to get around Austria, so we suspect riding might help out with happiness rankings. 9. New Zealand. New Zealand is an island country in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It consists of 2 main land masses, the North Island and the South Island, and more than 700 smaller islands, covering a total area of 268,021 square kilometers. Scoring the 9th position this year will surely fuel an already burning rivalry. New Zealand surpassed its neighbor Australia, who didn't even make it to the top 10 this year. Though Kiwis are a warm, welcoming bunch, but according to the UN's research, a lot of that comes from satisfaction not only when they're out and about, but also in the workplace. We guess the country's vast natural wealth, its beaches, vineyards and mountains plays a role too. 8. Luxembourg. Luxembourg made quite the upward leap, from 14th to 10th, bumping top 10 darlings Canada and Australia down a few pegs. With a population under 600,000, this small country offers high salaries and a strong social security system to help its citizens after retirement. But before you jump to the conclusion that money is actually buying happiness in Luxembourg, the country has many other perks that have nothing to do with cash, including a great healthcare system and excellent work-life balance, probably due to the mandatory 5 weeks of vacation time. 7. Sweden. Sweden is a Scandinavian nation with thousands of coastal islands and inland lakes, along with vast boreal forests and glaciated mountains. Its principal city, eastern capital Stockholm, and southwestern Gothenburg and Malmö are all coastal. This year, Sweden remained in the 7th spot. A high GDP per capita, which it shares with many of its Nordic neighbors, is not the sole reason either. An emphasis on social equality that is built into the education system starting in kindergarten, 16 months of paid family leave that can be split between a couple after a new child is welcomed into a family, and free daycare also makes Sweden the best country for women. Basically, an emphasis on work-life balance leads to a happier populace. 6. Norway. Norway is a Scandinavian country encompassing mountains, glaciers and deep coastal fjords. Norway has been dropping in this ranking since 2017, when it held the top spot, and this year it comes in as the 6th happiest country in the world. But there's not too much to complain about. The mix of a well-integrated government welfare system and a thriving economy built on responsible management of its natural resources means that very few are left behind, and the feeling of social support, trust in government, and economic well-being, it all contributes to overall happiness. 5. Netherlands. The Netherlands, a country in northwestern Europe, is known for a flat landscape of canals, tulip fields, windmills and cycling routes. Amsterdam, the capital, is home to the Rijksmuseum, Van Gogh Museum and the house where Jewish diarist Anne Frank hid during World War II. Netherlands ranked 5th this year. Its happiness levels have barely changed between 2005 and 2020, less than 0.03%. And in the Netherlands, it turns out that happiness starts young. A 2013 UNICEF report rated Dutch children the happiest in the world, based on a number of metrics related to educational well-being, safety, and health. 4. Iceland. Iceland is a Nordic island nation. It's defined by its dramatic landscape with volcanoes, geysers, hot springs, and lava fields. Massive glaciers are protected in Botniarkal and Snæfellsjökull national parks. Iceland ranks high in terms of the proportion of respondents who said they felt like they had a fellow citizen to count on when the going gets tough. This perhaps became most obvious in the wake of the country's post-2007 financial collapse and subsequent revitalization. You'd think that the perpetual flood of American tourists into Reykjavik might have dealt a blow to the residents' happiness, but when it comes to well-being, the Icelanders are unfazed. Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that they can always escape the city to a countryside that looks like another planet. 3. Switzerland. Switzerland is a mountainous Central European country, home to numerous lakes, villages and the high peaks of the Alps. Switzerland moved up 3 spots this year. It's a country where everything is voted on, from how many vacation days workers should have to how many immigrants should be allowed into the country, and referendums down to the local level happen many times a year. This system of direct democracy means that Swiss citizens feel an unparalleled sense of participation in their country's evolution, from landmark decisions on human rights to whether a new traffic light should be installed in their neighborhood. The Swiss are known to be insular, and it can be off-putting to first-time visitors, but there is a strong social fabric held together by a belief that every voice matters, which can go a long way toward feeling content. 2. Denmark. Denmark remained in the number 2 spot this year. The country rates near the top in all the reported metrics, life expectancy, social support, and generosity among them, but it is also a country hugely committed to renewable energy production. 39.1% of its energy was wind generated in 2014. Home to the world's most bike-friendly city and a coastline that you could spend a lifetime exploring, the country's happiness certainly comes in part from a respect for the planet it's built on. But a recent study from the Copenhagen-based Happiness Research Institute, whose existence is probably reason enough for a top spot, narrows down Denmark's happiness to a number of different categories, including trust in the government, economic security, freedom, civil participation, and work-life balance. 1. Finland. Finland continues to lead the world's happiest nation ranking for the 4th consecutive time. The global COVID-19 pandemic has shaken, taken, and reshaped lives everywhere. Finland has so far fought the coronavirus pandemic better than most of the countries. For the 4th year in a row, Finland is number 1 when it comes to happiness. The country consistently ranks among the top education systems in the world, occasionally beaten out by countries like South Korea, Japan, and Singapore. Much of that success comes from a widespread reverence for teachers, who are required to have a master's degree, their education is state-funded, and a pedagogical system that focuses less on quantitative testing and more on experiential learning and equal opportunity. Finland's residents enjoy a high quality of life, security and public services, with rates of inequality and poverty among the lowest of all OECD countries. A big part of well-being is good quality public health care. Finnish people have a sense that in case of ailments and disabilities they will get treatment. Since long before independence in 1917, gaps between the social classes in Finland have been smaller than usual. In Finland, you don't look up at people, and you don't look down. You look level. Finland has one of the world's most extensive welfare systems, one that guarantees decent living conditions for all residents, Finns, and non-citizens. Finland's healthcare, childcare, educational system and unemployment benefits are few reasons that makes it top the happiness index.